Hello and welcome to another edition of Triangle Investor Interviews. I'm your host Lucian Valkovic, and in today's edition we are joined by Sam Hartmann, VP of Exploration for F3 Uranium. Sam, thanks for joining me. It is great to have you here.
Thank you, Lucian.
F3 has a new discovery. This time it's not PLN JR Zone, but it is your Broach Lake property. Sam, walk me through this discovery. What did you find this time?
So Broach Lake is part of the Broach Lake property is part of the PLN project. We started exploring the southwest corner of the property. It's been underexplored for forever basically. We got in there, we got lucky. We did some early ground geophysics. We targeted that, and we got lucky in our fourth hole there on basically on one specific line of ground EM. Hole 205, we had cumulatively a total of 33 meters of radioactivity. What gets us excited about it is that it's not just, people are asking, is this another pearl on a necklace? That usually refers to when you're drilling along strike, and the strike is your necklace and you're looking for pearls along that. This is not related to A1 or JR Zone. This is a completely different trend, about 12 kilometers south of JR Zone. So we're in virgin ground. We've drilled one mineralized hole, and that's where we stand right now. Right now, this very moment, we are drilling a follow-up hole to that. That's in progress. We're not at the target depth yet. We're getting there fairly close. So right now, my guess is as good as your guess on what this thing can turn into, right?
Of course. So how many holes have you drilled so far? Please, if you can expand on that. How many meters in total?
So on this line, we've drilled 4 holes. The fifth one is in progress right now. Like I mentioned earlier, we were targeting ground EM. The conductors in that area, that's usually what we target is ground conductors. They're a little bit more difficult to model because we have very thick conductive mudstone on top of bedrock. And that sort of, when you're doing the modeling and the interpretation, it sort of shifts the window of where this conductor could be. So our first hole we drilled there was hole 202. Hole 202 targeted our first interpretation of the conductor, and we got a series of radioactive sniffs in that hole. It was up to, I think, about 700 counts, so well anomalous. And these were radioactive fractures that you can see over a quite wide window. So we kind of knew we were sort of close, or possibly close to something, but not quite there yet. And we also didn't intersect any conductor. Conductor being usually what we expect to see is these graphitic shear zones. That's, for example, what JR Zone is hosted in, right? So we stepped way back with hole 203, and that was a 100-meter step back. We drilled it to over 700 meters, drilled across the entire geological window, and we were sort of trying to see where do we have this unit that's responding or causing this conductor, which we never did find. And then we did drill 2 more holes. We drilled 204 after that. That was up dip, so above the original hole 202. These holes all had great alteration, by the way. They didn't really intersect any anomalous radioactivity and nothing in terms of the structures that we're used to. There are structures in there, but not really what we were looking for. Then we did a 4th hole. So at this point, it's, I would say that most people would not have drilled a 4th hole on that line at this point, right? You're probably close to 3,000 meters of drilling into it. We did do another down dip hole of 202. So now this is above 203, the very deep one, about 150 meters above that. That was hole 205, and that was the discovery hole of that zone.
Sounds great. Let's put things in context. How far is this Broach drilling area from the best PLN holes you drilled prior? And if you can explain a bit about the geology here, as it seems, like you said, to be different from the JR Zone.
So in terms of distances, we're about kitty corner. So we're about 12 kilometers straight south of JR Zone. We're about 12 kilometers away from Triple R deposit. So that would be to the southeast, and then about 15 kilometers to Arrow. So it's sort of sitting in that southwest corner, kitty corner to JR Zone and PLS and Arrow. Geologically speaking, it's in a domain called the Clearwater magnetic domain. So that's a magnetic high. It's a very prominent feature geologically on the west side. It's a mag high, so it's very magnetic. In the past, everyone assumed that it consists mainly of intrusives like granites and diorites and stuff like that. Some people think it's a very old shear zone that was sort of taken advantage of by these intrusions. But what you can see when you zoom out and look at the broader picture, you have this magnetic domain, and all the conductors on the west side of it sort of trend up to the northwest, and on the east side they sort of trend down to the southwest. So there's this sort of shift in conductors, right? You have JR Zone on this side, you have PLS and Arrow on that side, and this is now right in the middle. And there just hasn't been much focus on that area at all. What we see in these holes, though, is that there are the usual rocks still in there that we are looking for. Okay.
Yeah, Sam, when do you plan the first follow-up drill hole, and will you have a spring break, or you will keep drilling into the summer?
So the follow-up drill hole to 205 is in progress right now. So I think that how we move on.
It's in the progress right now. So there will be no pause.
One hole's in progress. That'll be done in probably about a week or so. Mm-hmm. After that, I think we may take a pause or we may keep going through. And that's really dependent on the results of this follow-up hole and just the market response as well. We were all quite surprised by the lack of attention, I guess, when we put this thing out. I don't know if it's, people are scared, and junior exploration, especially uranium, certainly is up there on the scale of risk, right?
Unfortunately, yes. This discovery hole had a 30-meter thick interval, while the thickest holes in the JR zone are about 20 meter.
Yeah.
What are the implications of this?
Good question. So JR zone, we know the dip of it. We know it's fairly shallow dipping. It's not as vertical as a lot of these other deposits. So when we drill JR zone, we're drilling it almost perpendicular. So we know the orientation of the zone, what it looks like. When we're drilling through it, we can tell that these holes are almost true thickness. So when we say 22 meters intercept, that is about how thick it is. Now this next hole, 205, we hit about 30 meters, which is thicker than what we have hit at JR zone. However, we aren't exactly sure of the geometry of this of the mineralization, right? And so we don't really know at what angle we're drilling through it. So it's encouraging that it is that thick and continuous for sure. However, to be cautious, we also aren't going to say that that's true thickness because we really don't know yet. It could be that this is a very steep or nearly vertical thing and we're drilling it at a minus 63. So we would be cutting it at 30 degrees. Or we could be looking at the same scenario as JR zone where it is shallow dipping like a 45 and we are getting close to true thickness. So I think the next few holes will shed light. And what's unique about this discovery, again, is that there's very little pre-existing work to base this drilling on. Really, it was our ground EM, which is not that high confidence. Also, the ground EM that was done, oftentimes what we'll do when we do ground EM, we do a grid, right? It's an actual grid over an area of interest. And on each line of your grid, you basically pick up your conductor. You can picture it as a dot on your line, and then you can connect all the dots, and that's your conductor trace. What we've done at PW is more of a wildcat exploration type ground EM survey, where it's not really a grid. It's really five lines that are separated from anywhere from 800 meters to a kilometer, right? So we don't really have that great of control on what the strike of this thing is. And, we're assuming we're drilling perpendicular to it. We think that we are, or close to. But really ultimately what we're going to need is a lot more holes in this area. And that would give us
Yeah, yeah, good point. Especially on the wildcat drilling. So, do you plan to do more wildcat holes? I mean, it's a big property. Will you test some new unexpected areas?
I think probably we will. Right now, we do want to build a little bit on the momentum of PW and build some more value on top of JR Zone for the company. I think the quickest way to do that is to flesh out this new discovery. But we certainly are talking about drill testing new associated conductors that are in this new PW area, as well as other conductors on the west side of the property, also the Broach Lake property that we've known about since 2014 that have never gone drill tested. So I think that ultimately we'll go back to if markets allow, a two diamond drill program, and sort of find a balance of expansion drilling, understanding what's at PW, how long it is, and at the same time though testing stuff around it as well.
So, you presume that would happen in this year or later?
I think that some of it could happen this year. I would imagine, yeah. I don't
Okay.
think that we want to wait too long. There's always the risk that you'll never get to do it if you don't do it now, right?
Of course, of course. You mentioned that this is not another small pearl in the necklace, but you can draw some parallels, early parallels to discoveries nearby. Do you see geological similarities with the big deposits like Arrow or Triple R?
So a lot of these deposits, Arrow, Triple R, and JR Zone, they are hosted in shear zones. So those are graphitic shears that we don't have yet, right? So based on this one hole, and again, this is just a random snapshot that we've drilled,
Yeah.
we don't see that. And I think that as we drill more, we may find that, and that this may become more of a traditional look to it. But what we do see right now, though, is instead of these graphitic structures, we have more of a brittle type structure and much more widespread alteration. So the alteration is not as focused at JR Zone. You have the 20 meters of mineralization that's sitting in this, call it 40-meter thick shear zone. All your alteration is structured inside of that shear zone. And now what we're seeing is much more widespread alteration. And that's sort of what led us. Hole 205, we hit at around 390 meters downhole. So that's about 330 meters from surface, right? That hole we drilled to 725 meters. And that is because we kept seeing more alteration and dravite mineralization and all these things that are proxies to uranium mineralization over hundreds of meters, not just tens of meters, right? So I think there is some similarities. The structures are there; they're not graphitic, and part of that may be just because we're in this different domain. One of the theories is that the rocks need to be graphitic to begin with. When you shear them, they develop sort of more graphitic planes, and the graphite is almost like a lubricant, and it leads to these well-developed graphitic shear zones. And what we have now is different rock types that don't have they don't have background graphite in them. So when you shear them, you're developing sort of a different looking structure.
Understood. Sam, are you using any new exploration techniques with this drilling or in the future drilling? Do you plan to implement some new exploration techniques? When I say new, maybe taking the advantage of AI in the exploration.
Maybe. I mean, at some point, AI works great when you have a lot of data, especially when you have too much data that you can't wrap your human brain around it. And AI can sort of compute all the X's and O's and come up with a pattern or something that you're not seeing. This scenario here is there was no information. Right? There was nothing there. There was a couple drill holes from the previous operator from 2015-16 that we liked that were about 1.5 kilometers away, but not on strike of the structure we're looking at right now. There's very little information there. I think that AI is great, and at some point when you have enough data, that sort of happened to us at over A1 at JR Zone. You know, you get ground EM, you get resistivity, then we do a joint inversion, and you end up with a lot of different data sets, geochemistry and geophysics, and at that point maybe you can look at it, see what comes out. At PW, there just really isn't much to go on right now. So
Okay.
I think right now it's more of a human intelligence thing, and we just need to figure out what's going on with more drilling, and then get an idea of what this thing looks like. How big could it be? I think that I don't think that we're going to be doing these very tight 15-meter step outs, like we did at JR Zone. We may initially. Right now, my plan is probably to do 30 meters on adjacent lines and just sort of see which way this trends. Is it this way or this way? And then we can be a little bit more aggressive if if the mineralization allows.
Got it. What's next for PLN JR Zone A1 B1? What are the next steps over there?
So A1 we sort of call the continuation of the structure that JR Zone is on until this Harrison fault, which is a massive offsetting fault. Past that, it's B1. The A1 area, we've probably drilled it off adequately, looking for more pearls in the necklace, if you will. However, B1, we still have assays outstanding from more than 20 drill holes in there, and we're definitely not done with B1. There's a lot of drilling that's still warranted in there. However, right now, in the short term, it's PWs that's going to be the focus.
Any timeline on the assays from B1?
So they sort of slowly come in. Every week or so, you get a new assay certificate with 20 or 50 samples. But all in all, I think there's close to 4,000 samples still outstanding there.
Okay, okay. When do you believe you could define the resources there, resource there? How far are you from achieving that?
Resource estimate at JR Zone, I think
Yes,
we
yes.
can. Yeah, I think that we can do that this year, and I think that's going to be the plan to do. We still have 2 drill holes that are cased in there. As you know, we pre-case our drill holes with a different kind of a drill rig. We have 2 holes left in that zone that we wanted to do at the end of this winter, but then we found PW, so that's sort of been on the back burner. I envisage that we go in there, drill those 2 last holes sometime this summer, and get all the assays completed. There's still some outstanding in JR Zone as well, and then we can be on our way towards a resource estimate.
What are the plans for your, sorry, I forgot the name, Pinto, is it Pinto?
Minto.
Yeah, sorry. What's the plan there?
Minto Lake, I don't think we have any immediate plans. Minto is fairly deep. We did drill a hole there in 2022. As I think a 1,000-meter drill hole. We don't need to drill up there to keep the property in good standing, and for us, we always focus on the shallow end. PW, the unconformity, we do have a bit of sandstone there, about 20 meters of Athabasca sandstone. The unconformity is at a depth of 150 meters, right? So when you look at the whole basin is about close to 90,000 square kilometers. What we're interested in sort of is the rims around it where it's shallow.
Okay.
So where is it less than 200 meters deep, right? That's sort of our focus. Less than 200 meters deep around the basin, that's 12% of the area of the basin, which is already small to begin with, right?
Got it. You announced 7 million private placement a few days ago. If I remember correctly, those are flows through shares. That means that the big chunk of this is going to the current and the upcoming drill programs.
Yeah, that's correct. It was 7 million without the over allotment. I think that was a very significant premium on that financing. I think it was just over 30% premium and no warrants. It is flow through, so all that money will go into the ground, starting with this spring program.
Okay, news flow from the company. I mean, from your side, geological side, exploration side. What can we expect next, and when can we expect?
I think the next news should be probably the follow-up drill hole, the 205, this down dip drill hole. Maybe we'll do one more before we release. We don't want to release every hole if we don't have to, right? It's a lot of work to put news releases out. But I think it'll be drill news.
And assays probably, right?
Drill news and assays. A lot of the assays that are outstanding, especially at B1, those aren't going to be assays where we expect, high grade uranium, because we've already announced SINT results. So really, those assays, we look at the geochemistry and using that to plan follow-up drilling to try to make another discovery at B1, right? So I don't think that's going to be a driver for Newsflow. Right now, it's PW.
Okay. Before I let you go, I have to know your comments on the uranium market. How are you viewing that at the moment?
Well, I mean, uranium is always one of the more volatile sectors. I think right now everyone's sort of looking at precious metals and gold and trying to hide away from all the scary things out there. Eventually things will calm down and sense will return, right? But I mean, the supply and demand curve, or if you just look at the story of uranium, it hasn't changed.
Yeah.
Especially not on the demand side. If somebody's building a reactor and it's going to need X amount of fuel, that doesn't change. All the risk is sort of on the supply side, right? Of the execution risk, and I think the story is just going to build and get better over time, which is annoying for people to hear because they've heard it for so long, right?
Yeah, that's a good point, and agreed on every word you said. That was Sam Hartmann, the VP of Exploration for F3 Uranium. Sam, I want to thank you for coming to my show, and I wish you luck with the exploration program over there.
Thank you very much.